Network, and I serve as the executive director and founder of the Brotherhood of Excellence Academy. We're on a mission of ending fatherless generations by preparing males for empowerment, entrepreneurship, enrollment, enlistment, and employment. Under the empowerment segment of our mission, we have launched a broadcast called Teaching Boys and Raising Sons. Again, we have started a broadcast called Teaching Boys and Raising Sons. We're going to be interviewing mothers or fathers or even joint couples who are actually raising sons. In some instances, they may be raising sons now. They maybe have already raised their sons, and so they have the opportunity to reflect on how did they prepare them for manhood, or how did they have conversations about police brutality. Let's not forget George Floyd, and what kind of conversations did that take place within their household. We want to share what these parents, these mothers, these fathers have learned on their journey of raising sons. So Teaching Boys and Raising Sons, everybody can get something out of it. It might be a leadership nugget. It might be something that you have been really wanting to hear other people's thoughts and opinions about it. Again, we are super excited for the opportunity under our mission and one of the components of our mission is empowerment. And so we are so excited to be able to offer these empowerment segments under our broadcast, Teaching Boys and Raising Sons. Let's get started. There is a current impeachment that's taking place, the date in terms of date of this recording. So the current impeachment is taking place. Mm-hmm. So what kind of conversations did you all have regarding what happened on January the 6th? And really, some people call it a riot. Other people call it a domestic terrorist attack on the Capitol.
That's what I call it. That's what I call it too.
So what kind of conversations as this thing is unfolding? I remember being at my home and getting Apple is sending me updates. I'm like, right on the Capitol. What's that? And going into YouTube and just stopping what I'm doing because I'm floored at, what's taking place. So what kind of conversations happen in your household regarding January the 6th?
So, I think the first question that I remember is my middle son asking, how is that possible? And, he just couldn't wrap his brain around what we were seeing on the television. And I must say, I am somewhat guarded in what I'm watching publicly with the kids. Some things I feel like are unnecessary to put on their minds and on their spirits, right? But this was something very different. And we were, watching the news, and they were showing the images of, just the terrorist attacks. That's what they are. And then just the disrespectful nature of, sitting at Nancy Pelosi's desk and putting feet on desks. And, my sons were looking like, who does that? Like, how is that possible that someone can behave like that? And it was my oldest who said, well, if they were Black, it would have been a lot different. So, they are very aware of the racial differences that exist. We ended up having a brief conversation around the difference in terms of what we've seen with Black Lives Matter protests, and the fact that people were peacefully protesting. There was no wielding of garbage cans and, pipe bombs and all of the things that we saw. There was no assaulting of police. And we still saw great terror in the response from the police in those Black Lives Matter protests. So they've seen the difference. And we had a conversation about just the state of our world and the state of the country, and the fact that systemic racism was at play even in this riot. We saw police officers just open barricades and let them come right in. So there was a drastic difference that, I think my oldest son picked up on it the quickest and the most, and verbalized it the most. But it really was something that sparked the conversation around, well, how is this even possible? I think they think of the White House and they think of the Capitol as kind of this fortress. It's this, sacred place almost. Liking it to a church where, bad things are not supposed to happen there. And aren't there armed guards that protect these buildings? And, my youngest son said, so anybody can just walk in there and do that? Just really, just trying to manage just the shock of what actually happened and the fact that it happened. So we had that conversation. We haven't had very many conversations following that. I think it was a very staunch example of the differences that we see in this country. And it just goes back to some of what I talked about, in our earlier conversations around being forced to help them understand the difference that race brings and how we are treated, how we are perceived, and how our actions are perceived. So it was just another example of that, unfortunate one at that.
Exactly. I think I had to do a segment on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it really painted the picture of the two worlds that we live in. And I literally gave a picture of the domestic terrorism and the images of that verse and the lack of preparation from the police officers in contrast to the Black Lives Matter. Right. And you saw shields and masks and right. And you saw them lined up on the steps with the "you better not" with guns versus the fist fighting.
Right.
And so again, they are completely different worlds. And I think as your son said it best, if they were African Americans, we would see cameras turned off because there would be a sea of individuals who are no longer with us.
Who are no longer with us. That's right. That's right. And that was really the point that he was making in terms of the difference. And it was a stark difference. I think at one point in the clip that we saw, there was a rioter who was reaching his hand almost through the door, and he was actually patting one of the officers on the shoulder, like they were cronies almost. And I remember us all looking like, who gets the opportunity to pat an officer on the shoulder in the middle of a domestic terrorist event? Like when and how does that ever happen? If we were walking down the street having a nice friendly conversation with a police officer, we wouldn't dare go ahead and pat them on the shoulder. Oh, you're doing a great job. That would be considered assault. So even if it was a nice positive gesture. So, even recognizing some of those small things in the short clips that we watched that day, they were just shaking their heads like, how is this even possible?
Exactly. let me stay in that same vein in terms of the racial unrest. So you had that on January the 6th, and then
Mhm.
this summer we had the death of George Floyd, and or the tragic murder of George Floyd by, again, the hands of a police officer or police officers. So
Yes.
what kind of conversations took place in your home regarding George Floyd?
So the initial conversations came, and unfortunately, my oldest son had seen the clip and had watched the recording before I even knew he had watched it. So we really had to have a moment where we all sat down and talked about, okay, here is yet another instance of a black man being murdered for no reason, and really having that frank of a conversation, and some of the things in that conversation were just very hard because the boys just really, typically they have questions, right? Typically they, we can kind of gauge where they're thinking and where, and be able to move the conversation along in that way. But I think in this instance, although my younger two sons did not see the full video, I didn't think it was appropriate or necessary for them to see all of that, but my oldest son did. So just even understanding and giving a understanding of how the incident unfolded, they were just so sad. It saddened them, to the point where they had no words, which really just hit me in a very in a very different place. Like, to be able to see it and know it, I was devastated just off of the entire incident altogether. But then to witness my sons being saddened by it to the point where they don't even know what to say, was very difficult, to deal with. And honestly, we didn't know what to say. I had no words, and this is when I'm so grateful that we are a team, because my husband is just wonderful in these kind of circumstances with being able to speak from a black man's experience. And he was very open and candid with my sons in terms of sharing experiences that he's had with the police, being pulled over for no reason, being stopped for no reason, not only when we were upstate New York, but here also in North Carolina. In the first 2 months that we were here, he was pulled over about 5 times, just riding, back roads, not speeding, we're not on the highway, pushing the speed limit, just going back and forth to, taking the kids to activities in school, were instances. So they've witnessed it. But he really was able to share from his perspective, how serious this is for them as black men. And this was kind of one of those moments where I really took a step back, because this was the opportunity for him to connect with them, man to boy, and share what that experience is like, and some of the things that unfortunately they will have to deal with, and just recognizing that this is an unfortunate and ugly part of our existence in this country, and that George Floyd was, one of the key incidents and events this year, but he was not the first. So really, recognizing that there were many, and there are many that came before him, that have experienced, their murder at the hands of the police for unnecessary reasons. And so I think that whenever he has these conversations, I just sit in awe, and I'm a captive audience right along with the boys, just kind of taking it all in, because he's had experiences that I have not had. And because he is a man, and because he is a Black man, his experience and the way he is perceived, and the way he has to manage his actions are very different than mine. I can, feel more comfortable walking into a grocery store, or even, being stopped by a police officer. The first thing on my mind is my safety, but I kind of have a feeling that, okay, I'm going to walk away from this, where, he does not, he has fear when it comes to being pulled over. And, being able to share that with the boys was a very real moment. And it wasn't the first moment that he's had that discussion with them. And, unfortunately, I'm sure it's not going to be the last. But it's just so difficult as a parent to explain to your children the ugliness in life, when everything that you want for them is, the beauty and the positive and the hope and the dreams. Like, we want to fill them up with all of those things because they need it and they deserve it, and that's what we would want them to aspire to. But when you have these events happening around us, it leaves you no choice but to have those hard conversations and share, and kind of give some time and some space to talk about that ugly side, because it is a reality that they have to face. And it's just so disheartening, as a parent to have these conversations. I don't think any of them become easier to have. It almost is harder every time, because it's like, okay, here's another example, and okay, here's another life lost. All right, that man looks like our uncle, that could be our brother. And, I can only imagine, from their perspective, that could be me. So having these conversations is just always difficult, but it's necessary. And we try to make sure that we make time and space for them, even if it's just sitting with a little bit of silence, because we just have no words.
Exactly. I think I love what you talked about in terms of allowing your husband to talk about his lived experiences. And you again staying there as a support to him, and also learning, because I remember you talked about earlier in our conversation when parents speak in your house, when you and your husband speak, whether it's a disciplinary situation or whether it is, in this case, talking about the brutal murders that continue to happen to African American men, your boys are actually listening. They might be doing little other things, but are actually listening and really trying to fully understand. And I love how you also talked about creating that safe space for them, so that they can also realize that they are still valued, they are still important, and regardless of what society says about them, they are important, and they're going to contribute so much to our society. And so maybe, just maybe, we'll see more change, so that they don't have to have these critical conversations with their children's children.
Absolutely. That is the goal.
Hello, my name is Shamika Smith, and I hope that you have had the opportunity to enjoy our broadcast. I hope that you've walked away with nuggets of wisdom, leadership components, and things that you could implement, whether it be in your family or whether it be in your learning environment or your teaching environment or whatever the case may be. Our hope and our prayer is that you walked away with something that is very tangible that you can use immediately. If you have enjoyed this broadcast, take a moment and share it with others so that we can continue to spread the word of how we are utilizing the component of empowerment through our broadcast, Teaching Boys and Raising Sons, so that others can be empowered as we all walk in this thing called life together. Also, if you are looking to donate to an organization, please consider us. We are a 501c3 organization, and so all donations are tax deductible. Once again, if you are looking for an opportunity to give in order for us to continue this broadcast, visit our website, also listed below, but also take a moment to just donate or share or let individuals know of the great work that we're doing under our broadcast, Teaching Boys and Raising Sons. We are so honored and privileged that you have taken time out of your day. We know we are all busy. And we are so excited that you have taken time out of your day to come and learn a leadership nugget, a word of wisdom, or something that we hope that will encourage you on your journey. Once again, I am Shamika Smith. I serve as the Executive Director and founder of the Brotherhood of Excellence Academy. Again, visit our website located at the bottom of your screen, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.